Hi, this is Dr. Scott Langford. I'm here with the Stanford Gen Global Educators Network YouTube channel and with the Foothill College Native American Heritage Month. We're here joined by our middle college program, which is an amazing program for high school age students that allows them to take Foothill College classes. And I'm welcoming my friend and colleague from many years ago at Stanford, Dr. Greg Sarris, who's currently a professor at Sonoma State University. He is also, I'm just going to give you the briefest intro because Greg is a difficult person to introduce. It takes a while. He's an award-winning, world-famous author in American literature. His books are frequently taught at Foothill College, including by me in this upcoming semester. He's been an activist, a social entrepreneur. He is the elected chairman of the Federated Indians of the Graton Rancheria up north in the Bay Area near Santa Rosa, and he'll have more to tell you about that. And he's also rolling out or helping to introduce a new curriculum to really revolutionize the way that Native American history is taught in the United States, working directly with the Smithsonian Institution, where he's on the board of directors, and the Museum of the American Indian. So I'll be asking about all of those things, but I want to start, Greg, by asking you how you got into academics, because I know that it was not exactly a straight line kind of journey, and I know that it has everything to do with community colleges, right? And in your particular case with Santa Rosa Junior College. So how did you end up being a professor, and was that a likely outcome for you when you were the same age as our high school age students that have joined us?
Are the high school age students juniors, seniors, what?
Both.
Both, oh, okay. Well, here I am, as I often, I used to live for many years, I lived in Los Angeles. I taught at UCLA for many years. And, people in Los Angeles, I was probably most unlikely to succeed. I hadn't read a book until 11th grade. But again, I was insecure. I used to sit in the back of the classroom, didn't think I was smart. But as I was beginning to say, it's a kind of a long path. I was living in Los Angeles, where I was a professor at UCLA for many years. And, in Los Angeles, people never say, how are you? They always ask you what you do. And I would always say, well, I'm a novelist, screenwriter, and a professor, and an Indian chief. What are you? And of course, they all thought it was a joke, and it's in fact true, sadly enough. I never thought I would do much. In fact, when I was your age or a little before, I didn't go to 8th or 9th grade. I was mostly on the streets or in juvenile hall. I was hoping, I always knew I had to make money, but I figured I would do that by selling drugs. And then I got a job and as a busboy to support a car. And I realized that would be the end of the road for me if I didn't start studying. So I went to, it was 11th grade. I had all remedial classes. It was very hard, and it was really lonely. And I don't know if any of you folks are, go through this when you make this transition from your friends and the folks on the streets to studying, but it's very lonely to be sitting alone with a light bulb reading. That's really a tough thing for me, the hardest thing, but I did it. And the whole idea was that I was going to get rich one day and not have a bunch of waitresses yell at me to pick up dishes. I would, but in the process of studying and being alone, I started reading a lot. And that's how I fell in love with literature and stories, because it reminded me of what I heard on the streets and in my American Indian home, where, people were always telling stories. So I gravitated towards that path. I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, principally because even though I graduated one of the 10 top students of my senior class in high school, even though I started with the remedial classes in 11th grade, but I really progressed quickly once I focused. I still probably wouldn't have been competitive for other colleges and universities. So I went to Santa Rosa Junior College, did very well, and then was able to transfer to UCLA and get an undergraduate degree, where eventually I went back as a professor and got tenure in record time. I went through the Stanford PhD program with Scott in record time. I got a master's and a PhD in 3 years, pretty good for a dumb street kid. But the point of all of this, I think one of the things, Scott, is that anything is possible. And depending on what you want to do, and for me, it was always wanting to help people, give back to the people who helped me, help my tribe, help my people. And I wanted to become, first of all, a professor, a teacher. And I used my background on the streets and other places to inform me. I learned not to be ashamed of that, but to be empowered by that. And no matter what background you come from, that becomes not a problem, but actually an asset for you going forward. It enabled me to challenge given definitions wherever I was. It has finally enabled me to challenge a federal government to get the rights to my tribe back and do all of that. I did become a professor. I wrote books, I made movies, as Scott said, and all of that. But I then proceeded to write a bill that I got through Congress that got the rights of my tribe back. We were illegally terminated in 1958. So I led that charge. And we were just restored. President Clinton signed my bill on December 27th, 2000, folks. And we're the last tribe in the United States to be restored by an act of Congress to this day. We began on a long path towards self-sufficiency, getting a reservation, starting a business, a casino. And in a mere 20 years, we've become the most influential business in Sonoma County, perhaps in Northern California. We've given over $160 million in gifts and charity. We've lifted our people out of poverty. In the last 10 years, we've turned around an 80% dropout rate to 100% graduation rate. We have 24 people in college, and it's what you can do when you want to help and do for others. There's nothing that can stop you. Just got off one of the reasons I'm late, a little sorry. I just got off the board meeting with the Smithsonian and with the NMAI. And I was quoting my great aunt, Mrs. Parrish, who was a dreamer and leader in our tribe, a spiritual leader. And she only had a second grade education, and she worked in the apple cannery. She wove baskets. She doctored the sick. She led all the ceremonies. She raised 15 children. She played 7 musical instruments. And I used to say to her, Auntie, how do you do all those things? And she said to me, folks, something that I'll say to you: there ain't no such a word as can't.
Well, you certainly proved that in my experience of you, Greg, which goes all the way back to graduate school at Stanford, as you say. And I want to mention a couple other things. I mentioned in my introduction that Greg is an award-winning novelist, filmmaker. His novel Grand Avenue was made into an award-winning HBO movie, which was the most viewed HBO series at the time, and still is, I think, the very best film made about contemporary urban Indians in the United States. I'm sorry to say, Greg, because it's been a while, that I still think that is by far the best film about contemporary Native Americans that's out there, that's come out of Hollywood. But I also want to mention that in addition to all the amazing philanthropy that Greg's tribe has accomplished for his region, which is Sonoma, Napa, the Santa Rosa area, the North Bay, where they've given enormous, like, millions of dollars for sustainability, millions of dollars for green spaces and parks, contributed to the police, to education, to scholarships. His tribe also just became the largest non-corporate donor to UCLA in the history of UCLA by giving an enormous gift to start and strengthen a Native American law program down at UCLA. And it's worth noting, by the way, that UCLA's chancellor, Gene Block, is a Foothill graduate. So there's a sort of a double connection there. But Greg, I was really proud of you for that contribution as well.
Well, actually, I have to correct you. We're scholars, and
Well, you correct me. You've
Dr.
been correcting
Langston
me
got
your
it
whole
wrong.
life, Gregory.
We're the second largest gift. There was one gift in the history of the university that was larger.
Okay.
David Geffen for the medical school.
Okay. Well, all right. But still an amazing gift, and something that I'm really proud of. So another thing that I wanted to ask you about, now that you've mentioned that your tribe was restored, and again, I'm not sure how many students know how many tribes were disenrolled by the US government on a mass scale, how few have been able to restore their tribal status, right? But now that you are a tribe, I wanted to talk about your relationship to the U.S. government as a formally recognized tribe, because in a sense, the Stanford channel here that we're co-hosting with, the Stanford channel, is all about internationalizing education at the community college level, which I think is a marvelous task. But I'm afraid that it's often framed or misframed as something that is always, quote unquote, outside the continental boundaries of the United States, when in fact, you know better than I know that there are dozens and dozens and dozens of independent nations with, quote unquote, within the boundaries of the United States. So what is the relationship between your tribe and the US government right now?
That's an important question, Scott, and I could actually teach a whole class and go on forever about that. But let's just go back. And one of the things that happened during let's call it a 200-year, 300-year period of colonization of this continent, of this country here, tribes were defeated by the federal government and usually acquiesced in some form of a treaty with the federal government. So to make it real simple, folks, what they said is, we'll put you, it's almost like a prison camp, we'll put you on this reservation in the Midwest and Southwest. There's some big reservations, maybe give you 1,000 acres here or there, let's just say, and you can do whatever you want. You can be a separate nation there and do whatever you want. You will have sovereignty. We will allow you your sovereignty to govern yourselves, feed yourselves, and do what you want. Of course, they put us in places where normally we would starve in the middle of nowhere, but they said, that's what we'll do. And then I'm generalizing here. And then they came along and began to terminate our sovereignty by saying, listen, we have to civilize these Indians. We can't they need to integrate, they need to assimilate into the larger society. So let's make them have private ownership of their land where they have to pay taxes and they lose their sovereignty. We'll let them keep it, but they're going to have to regard it as any other citizen of America. And many tribes fought that and said no. And here in California, where there were so many tribes, small tribes, and they just gave us, in some cases, in my case, only 15.5 acres for the survivors in my area, up here in north of the Golden Gate Bridge in Marin and southern Sonoma counties. And they said, you can do whatever you want. Go out there and start. But they took it away. They came in 1958 here, and they said, would you like to own your land? Well, they came during a time when most of us were out harvesting pears, working in the fields, and two old men who didn't understand English very well, and certainly not the ramifications of the law, said, yeah, it sounds good to own your land. Well, we lost everything when those two guys signed away. But the provision of the government, folks, was that you had to do this by consensus of the tribe, and they didn't. So what I did is appeal this in the bill so that we could get sovereignty back, our sovereignty to determine who we are and be a separate nation within the United States of America. Now, there's federal law that we have to comply with, but we get around state and local law, which I'm going to get to in a second. Because, okay, so what happened? We got our rights back after my bill, as I mentioned, and we were a sovereign nation having a nation-to-nation relationship with the US federal government. Now, as part of that nation-to-nation agreement as a separate nation within the United States of America, we had to comply with federal law. That means we couldn't go around murdering people or forcing young girls into marriage or doing anything like that. We had to comply with federal law. That was the agreement. But we did not have to adhere to state laws. We did not have to adhere to local laws. We could get around them because we were a sovereign nation, which folks will help you understand why Indians can have casinos and other people can't. We can have class 3 gaming. That's the most lucrative. You can have card clubs and things like that. Anybody can do that as a private business, but you can't have full-on gaming in California unless you're a sovereign tribe on sovereign nations, because that's part of our sovereignty. People would say to me, well, why did you build a casino? That's terrible and all of that. Well, you know, I would always say, well, just be lucky. We could have done whatever we wanted. We could have had a strip club, people stripping out there if we wanted. We could have done whatever we wanted to do. The reason Indians did go to casinos, by the way, is because we were poor. We had no other means of self-sufficiency. We were on these plots of lands where we're sovereign, but the government wasn't feeding us. There's grants that we can apply for and get to help us, but they're minimal in terms of raising our people up and empowering us. So that's how we have, and so the federal government regulates our casinos. They work with us to regulate and put in regulations. So, and it's agreement between us and the federal government. So we do work as separate nations. For example, I had problems with the local city police here, and I banned them from the reservation. They can't come on the property. They have no say.
Yeah, and I want to brag again on your behalf, Greg, that what you've done with the funds, like you have one of the most lucrative casinos in the United States now, but those funds, in addition to funding sustainability programs, in addition to funding parks, in addition to funding police and education and scholarships, your employees are making union scale wages, they're getting health benefits, you've really been an exemplary employer in your county and in this state, and shown the way that a business can and should be run to benefit the society, not just your own tribal members, but also everyone around you. And I really am proud of knowing you for that reason, Greg, because I think your tribe, I think, is exemplary in the whole United States. You've called it a paradigm shift yourself, but I think it is literally a different way to run a business and shows a path forward for all businesses in the United States, because you're still making them, you're still making great profits, but you're doing it in a way that's completely socially responsible.
Okay, so thank you, because now, Scott, we're getting to the heart of what's really important and what operates this. Very good questions. So when we got together, I was a professor of English. I didn't know anything about casinos. But when I got together with the tribal council and we decided to go this route, we said our mission will be social justice and environmental stewardship. And if we have this opportunity, we must do something that benefits Indian and non-Indian alike. Folks, young people, we're all in this together. The sun, the earth, all the things that we share are not going to discriminate. So if we as a people have an opportunity, it has to be more than just repeating the sins of history and colonization, saying, now I got mine, I'm rich, I'll go out and buy a car. It has to be something transformative. Let's do something different. So in addition to building union jobs and providing all of that, in building the casino, we have provided 2,000 jobs here within the casino. And anybody who works 20 hours or more a week, they get the Kaiser Gold Cadillac plan, whereby they pay nothing out of their paycheck for full coverage. As I like to say, $10 deductible for brain surgery or aspirin. I use the brain surgery. And then vision, and we feed you here, we provide the uniforms. We're even gonna work on providing housing in the future for all our team members here on the reservation. So again, dignity in the workplace. We had a $15 minimum wage 5 years ago. So, we really believe that we wanted to do that. And in that same spirit of running the business, we wanted to make sure that we left as little a footprint as possible, which is hard in a big business. But again, folks, we've heard about the shrinking middle class. The fact that 50 people in this country have more money than 150 million people is a problem. I'm not a socialist or a communist or anything like that, but if you don't give people an opportunity to pursue the American dream, if they don't have enough money, if they can't pursue what they need to do, we're going to have chaos, much of like what we're seeing. So we're making a lot of money, share it. And we believe in doing that. So it's just not with our team members so that their kids can go to school, they have health coverage for their families and so forth. But we wanted to give money to programs that advocate for social justice and environmental stewardship. Now we're being very smart here, because a lot of the programs that we give money to, like for county parks and so forth, we become co-managers, folks. So we created a model here in Sonoma County where we gave money to help maintain a park, but we made sure that we were 50-50, created a board where the tribe works with the Board of Supervisors of Sonoma County to have equal say in how that park's going to be used. Currently, I'll let you in on a secret. I've talked to the governor, California. He's very excited. I've just had a discussion a couple of days ago with the head of the State Department of Parks here, the newly appointed person. And we are going to start creating a model here in our territory to do the same with the state parks. Notice the position that puts the tribe in as tribal people. We become engaged, empowered citizens beyond the confines of our sovereign, very small sovereign nation, but it creates model relationships with other nations. That's so important. So if you have money and an opportunity, you don't close in and build walls, you build relationships. And in the small place where we are, that's what we're doing, and we're doing it successfully. The governor's very excited. Many people are aware of what's going on. And again, with the model that we have in business, where you're taking care of all your team members, folks, imagine if Google or Amazon did the same.
Imagine.
There'd be a transformed world.
Imagine. Well, Greg, we've talked about your personal transformation, your journey from high school to Santa Rosa JC and on to UCLA, and then to become a professor. We've talked about the tribal transformation that you helped to engineer, where your tribe was re-recognized as a sovereign nation. The business transformation that I never saw coming, because I knew you as an academic. I had no idea I would be speaking to a future major business leader someday. But I really wanted you to focus now on this new curriculum that you're rolling out with the Smithsonian Institution and the Museum of the American Indian out in New York, because I think this is yet another major transformational project. And since it's so new, you really haven't even shown it that much to me yet. So I'd love to hear more, and I'd really like to hear at some point what our students, our high school age students in the room, have to say in terms of their own educational journey or what this might mean to them. So what's going on with this whole project that you've got going with the Smithsonian Institution? Because to me, it sounds incredible.
Museum of the American Indian already has a program called Education 360, which is educational films about everything from historical films about, say, the Trail of Tears, and discussions about totems and stereotypes and things like that. But what we're doing, what I wanted to do, and the tribe gave, I believe it's $6.8 million to the Smithsonian to do this, the NMAI to do this, and I wanted to be an integral part of it, is that we're going to create a model for public and private schools, K through 12, so that there's 3 templates, Scott, one in the 4th grade, one in the 8th grade, and one in the 12th grade. And each template will contain an element that has to do with national history, then state history, and then local history of Indians. Local history will hopefully written by the local tribes. And then they'll obviously with the degree of difficulty for 4th, 8th, and senior years. This will be something that will be provided digitally to the schools, will be in the libraries, and will be available. We're just starting on the template. We've got the template idea there. My tribe will probably be one of the first to implement the full template and provide it for all the schools in Sonoma, Marin and Sonoma counties. So it's a way, again, to get past what has been 4th grade education here in California, for instance, where you build missions with sugar cubes in 4th grade and say the Indians were in the missions, and then what happened? I jokingly say, and it's not, as some of us older folks know, nobody knew there were Indians in California until there were casinos. And in fact, there's more Indians here than there was anywhere else. But again, it's a lack of knowledge. So in a way, as a way of somehow helping us understand our history and our presence here as American Indian people and people who share American history, I'm working with the Smithsonian on this model for our public schools. I've mentioned it, and we're going to work with the governor, the state of California, then to spread it out in all the schools in California, and likewise, hopefully, throughout the country.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned the sugar cubes, because I think in my 2 years that I spent in California growing up, I moved around a lot. I made those little models of the missions also, and I sort of cringe now to look back because really, honestly, meeting you in graduate school was one of the places where that flipped my whole view of American history in general, but Native history in particular. Recognizing, because I think I certainly would have been one of the kids who thought, oh, there are no Native Americans in California. Like, I didn't see them on TV, right? All I saw, I grew up playing cowboys and Indians, genocidally, now looking back. So I think that that looking at the whole range of education, 4th grade, 8th grade, 12th grade, is a brilliant way to do it. And I love the idea of having local tribes help build the curriculum also, so that local history becomes part of it. Because as you so frequently have mentioned in all of your speeches, I don't know how many students know how vibrant a center of Native American cultures plural, the Bay Area was pre-contact, right? How wealthy the tribes were, how they had thrived without wars for centuries and centuries and millennia. I still don't think that's part of most students' education here in California.
Yeah, here where we are all sitting today, there were more Native people here than there was anywhere else in the New World outside of the present site of Mexico City, which of course was the Aztec capital. All the language families that are found in the New World, all the language families, a representation of one of those families is found here in California. So we were a very complex culture, living sustainably with our environments. And that there's a lot of important lessons, which we're coming back to today. Controlled burning. We're finally understanding the importance of controlled burning. When the Spanish arrived and they saw us burning in the hills and so forth, they thought we were burning grass and so forth so that their cattle and horses would starve or something. So they forbid burning. The first 2 laws that they imposed upon California Indians were a law against burning and a law against bathing, because we would be nude and they couldn't stand nudity. They thought that was awful. And of course, in those days, I don't know if you knew history, but they used to just pile clothes on. They didn't take baths. And that's when perfume folks came about, and colognes, because they would just douse themselves with cologne because they stunk so badly.
Right, and as you know, your ancestors were taller, healthier than any of the Europeans coming through, because the Bay Area was like the Serengeti of North America, right? I mean, vast herds of elk, salmon runs with unbelievable wealth, oyster beds that stretched all across the bay, all this. I mean, it was an amazing sort of cornucopia of biological wealth, and the tribes all benefited from that. It's hard to believe now because most of that's gone. Haven't seen any elk wander through Foothill College campus lately.
Or pronghorn. There were great herds of pronghorn. Like the Serengeti, that's a good comparison, Scott, because it was like that. There were just great herds of pronghorn. And then you had your mountain lions, and you had your grizzly bears that chased them, and all of that sort of thing here. And of course, the great redwoods, all of it. 3% to 5% of the original growth being gone. There's no more grizzly bears. And so there's mountain lions coming back.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Well, at this point, I'd be happy to open it up for questions from the audience.
Yeah, I want to hear from the students. Thanks, Scott. I keep working and teaching because it's exciting, and I want to instill hope in you. A lot of young people look around, and there's a lot of reason to be depressed, but we're depending on you folks, and anything I can do to help help the next generations and continue a better way. I often quote Gregory Bateson, a scholar from the past, and he said, if we're all lemmings going over a cliff, folks, we still have two choices. One, we can walk with the rest and just drop off, or we can scream as we go and say, hey, there's another way. I want to be a teacher that's screaming so that I create a lot of students who will scream.
There we go. Okay, so we do have some questions in the chat, so I'll read one of them. Loop asks, we've got at least two going here. So Anna, I'll get you to your question also. Loop asks, what were your other options for businesses besides a casino? Here you mentioned vineyards.
Very, very, very good question.
Vineyards.
So, very good question. So when we were restored, when the federal government gave us back our sovereignty, and remember, we lost our small plot of land, 15.5 acres, part of the bill wasn't to give us more land, give us land. So we had to go out and buy it. And we're in Marin and Sonoma County. And if you know anything about the real estate in that area, it's rather expensive. This area, it's rather expensive. So we didn't want to go the gaming route. So for 2.5 years, we had many businesses come to us, organic cheese businesses and so forth. But these businesses wanted us to already have the land so that they could put their business on it and not have to pay taxes. Because, Indian people on sovereign lands, or a sovereign nation, we don't pay taxes. So on our property, or with our businesses on our property. So our reservations, our land. So, but we didn't even have any. And so everybody kept coming to us, smaller businesses with ideas to work with us or partner with us, but nobody wanted to put money up front. And we tried for 2.5 years, and then finally people began to discuss the C word, not cancer. And folks, again, as Scott said, I was unfamiliar with casinos. I didn't know anything. In fact, I kind of thought that, oh God, Vegas wasn't my thing. And that's about all I knew. And so I really didn't want to do it. But my non-Indian mother said, Greg, you can't leave your dad's folks now. Because there's so many bad examples of lawyers and people ripping Indian people off for casinos and creating them, and bad management agreements and so forth. So I bit the bullet, and as I said, we went forward, but with that route. And that's probably been to some extent the case with so many Indian tribes, because they haven't had that option to make that kind of revenue to become self-sustaining. So it was kind of sort of a default business, you might say. But that's why and how we ultimately came to the casino business.
Well, and again, I just want to triple emphasize, you created a whole new national model for how to run a casino. And it's inspiring and it's influential as well. Layla says, when you were our age, 16, 18 years old, where did you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? And how did you motivate yourself to question the narrative and be where you are today? I love that question.
Oh, wow. What was it? What was her name?
Layla, I think, if I'm pronouncing it.
Layla, wow. The question to ask, not about me, but also about yourself, the question to ask. Well, when I started studying and then started to love literature, and when I was about 18 or 17, 18, in that range, I began to get very serious about thinking about not being a drug dealer anymore. And I was thinking, at first I thought I was going to go into business, but I fell in love with literature And very soon I thought, I'll be a teacher. I'll be a teacher. I want to teach. I want to give other people the opportunity to transform their lives, to be an agent in transformation in people's lives, the way good teachers had been for me. So I thought, I want to do that. I'll do that. And I really thought I had a big, lofty goal. I thought the biggest thing was, and it was really cool, and I always wanted to do this, even when I was initially in the PhD program at Stanford. I'd be so lucky if I got a job teaching at a community college. That was my dream. I went to a community college. The teachers there were great. They inspired me. By the way, when you get through, I got through Santa Rosa Community College. UCLA and Stanford was a piece of cake after that. They really got me so well grounded, the junior college. But anyway, I saw myself becoming a teacher, hopefully getting in those days, you could get a master's degree, and that was really a lofty notion, I thought at that time, but that would be my goal. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to focus. I'm going to graduate from a good college after Santa Rosa JC, and I'm going to get a master's degree, and I'm going to come back to Santa Rosa Junior College and be a professor. Well, I sort of went in that direction, but then things just transpired. Folks, I never shot for the stars. I shot for the moon. So I never had unrealistic dreams. I always kept in mind the things I was pretty sure I could accomplish. And in the process, always kept doors open. So I made decisions in my life that would give me options. And that's the important thing to think about as you make choices. Decide on majors, decide on classes, decide on life decisions that will keep doors open for you. Be careful of narrow pathways. Particularly young people, the world is changing, jobs are changing so much. Be careful. Everybody who just wants to be an engineer, or they just want to go down a narrow path. Choose a path that allows you the entire field on both sides of the path. That's kind of what I did going forward. But again, I didn't think, certainly didn't think I was going to be a casino mogul. I didn't think I was going to be a professor at UCLA. I didn't think I was going to be a PhD candidate at Stanford. I thought I would go to, but my grades were good. I had a passion because I wanted to help people. And if I could help people, I had to get these things done. It wasn't about me. If you're just in it, if you don't have a passion for what you want to do, you're going to lead maybe not a mediocre life, but not a happy life. Find what you like and go forward, a passion. Maybe your parents won't like it. I tell my students, their parents might want them to be a doctor or a lawyer. Be what you really want to be and go for it. You will win. Oh. I did.
All right. And now we got a bunch of really good questions teed up here. So let me give you another one. Your business, this is Miles' question. Your business model is really cool and inspiring. It truly would make the world a better place if those good practices were used at Google or Amazon. What could be done to incentivize big businesses to treat workers well?
If I had the answer, Miles, I would be out there screaming it from the rooftops as soon as I got off this podcast here. But you know what? I think the best thing I can do, and I'll just tell you, this is a model that works, and you can make money. And I think that Google and Amazon and some of these big tech businesses and others, they're going to learn that they're going to hurt in the long run because of the disruption in society and everywhere else by people being frustrated and not treated fairly. And all I can do is show them with this model that you can treat people well and you can make money. And if you don't want to treat people well, it's only about your greed. And so I shame them. I publicly shame them and call them out. And then when they say to me, you can't do that or that doesn't work, I point to this model. The same situation, let me quickly give you an example. You know, we're a big business and then we're having in a period of lockdown and all of that. And what we did, because we had the money, is went through incredible COVID safety measures. We have thermal machines at our front door at the casino. Of course, we're only operating at about 60% capacity because of safe distancing within the casino. But we have thermal machines that we invested in that can take your temperature when you come in. We take your picture. You're on surveillance the whole time you're here. We can see anybody you got near, all that kind of thing. It costs money. But folks, listen to this. If the federal government was smart enough to put money up front for these safety measures for schools and smaller businesses, they wouldn't be worrying about all these bailout measures now, and they would be stopping COVID in the process. So once again, Graton has created a model that works. The public health officer of Sonoma County is coming here. She's shocked because of the low incidence of positive COVID tests. How are you doing that? Come and see. So you create the models, and I can't change the world, but I can provide a model for the world. And for you young people, each of what you do in your lives becomes a model for the world if you let it be. It may be a pebble in the ocean, but it does have a ripple effect.
Wow, and that's a great segue to Kat's question. So Kat asks, who's the person who's had the biggest impact on your life, and what was that impact?
A couple things. It was a teacher in 11th grade who challenged me to an English teacher in a remedial class who was really tough with me. All the students would drop and get away from him and stuff. And he, said, "Oh, you think you're really tough? Try to read this book and see how tough you are." He challenged me, but as he challenged me, he cared about me. And I knew that he wanted me to win. That was a teacher who wants you to win and can challenge you. And it worked. And he was a huge influence. He got me to focus and read. Secondly, or not secondly, but equally, was a Indian leader, spiritual woman named Mabel McKay, who again had a second grade education, but she always reminded me that there was something bigger than me, bigger out there in the world. And I used to watch her work in an apple cannery again, drive 100 miles at night to doctor the sick and weave baskets and do these great things. And she taught me, again, discipline, patience, and sacrifice if you're going to do well here in the face of all that's difficult. And my God, she was a woman, an American Indian woman, born in 1907, growing up in a time with racism and all of that horrible stuff that Indian people here in California and elsewhere went through. And she wasn't bitter. She rose above it. So she was a huge influence in my life and my way of thinking about things, and also got me to challenge that narrative. Let's go back to the other questions, the question that preceded this one, because she really taught me the other ways of seeing and understanding things and how you might interrogate that narrative. What constitutes smart? In many ways, most of the standard world, you might say, would consider her a poor, uneducated Indian. And in my experience with her, she had more wisdom in her little finger than all the professors at Stanford put together. And in fact, when I took her to Stanford, and Scott will remember this, she interrogated the professors and put them on the spot.
That's right. And I'll mention that Greg's book about Mabel McKay, who was a great tribal leader and shaman, is called Weaving the Dream, and it is taught all the time in anthropology courses across the United States, including at Foothill College. So it's another of the books that you might want to look into if you're interested in Greg's work. Mabel McKay, Weaving the Dream, which is an evergreen classic now that's been in print for decades.
Scott, can I just say one more thing on this question?
Of course.
Each of you young people, your life and your life experience is not only unique, it's sacred. Respect it. If, in fact, high schools and colleges want dialogue instead of monologue, they need your experience. They need you to speak. We can't have we say we want dialogue, but it takes two or more. It takes a chorus. And so we need your experience here. Honor what you are and join the dialogue. Don't settle for one narrative. Your life experience can interrogate that narrative.
Right. And another great segue, Jane asks, how and when did your tribe gain the reservation back? My tribe, the Ponca of Nebraska, were also terminated, and they still don't have a reservation, although they do own some land and are just making a casino right now. Do you guys have an actual reservation or just own land?
We do, and you can only put a casino on trust land or reservation land. So we have a reservation. It is our trust land. It's approximately 320 acres here on the west side of Rohnert Park, between Rohnert Park and Sebastopol in Northern California. And the casino's on 68 acres of that. And the rest is we're doing organic farming, beginning organic farming and other sorts of things. Yes, we do have a reservation. We get a little confused. That's a good question, because at least here in California, you can't have a casino unless it's on trust land, because only when it's on trust, or let's say reservation land, do you have sovereign rights, right? Otherwise, once you're off the reservation, you don't have sovereign rights. You can, now my tribe can go buy businesses like anybody else, but it will have to adhere to state and local. It won't have the same rights that it has on its sovereign land. So just everybody be clear about that. That's important to understand.
Where do you see this going in terms of, like, I think Greg was also part of the recent mandate by the CSU system, not the UC system, that ethnic studies be taught and required within the CSU system, which is also having an impact at Foothill College. So let me throw in a question on my side, Greg. Foothill College has never had its own ethnic studies department over many objections from me. I was about to say we're my dead body, but I'm not dead yet, so I still have some hope. But we're having some student-led movements right now demanding ethnic studies at Foothill College. And one of the reasons that this might finally happen is that you and the other CSU governors have been able to come forward and say that this is going to be a mandate within the CSU system. So can you talk a little bit about your own views in terms of ethnic studies, your own experiences with ethnic studies, and the importance for Foothill College of making that happen?
Well, it's a complicated issue. Of course, it should be there. But one of the problems when you have ethnic studies departments is it lets other departments, i.e. English departments, get out of having to teach ethnic literature. They can say, oh, that's over there. Whereas if you're teaching American literature, it should be Latinx, it should be Black, it should be American Indian, Asian American literature. It shouldn't just have to be over in an ethnic studies department. I want to be careful about ghettoizing us. And universities will be very quick to do that, right? Departments will be very quick to do that, because departments fight for a position. So if you have, especially these days, if you have a tenure track position, everybody's going to start fighting for what they want in that position. But we have to be present in the history department, in the English department, in the sociology department, in the psychology department, philosophy department. We need to be present there. So in creating ethnic studies, it doesn't necessarily mean for me that you create a ghetto or a place over here where you just do this. It must be integrated the best way possible, and not allow other departments not to be responsible for creating within their department a dialogue of peoples.
Okay, and I'll just put a word in that we do have Native American literature in Foothill English Department, and Latinx literature, and so on and so forth. So I feel like our English department is doing that job, but I don't know that that's always the perception of the students as well. So that was good, wise advice in terms of making sure that an ethnic studies department doesn't become a way of simply ghettoizing, to borrow your word, intersectional studies in general. It does have to be across the curriculum and across the entire campus and really involve the whole campus. And I know that's been the vision of the students, absolutely for sure. I'll dance up carefully to another question about a highly controversial figure. This is a question from Chris Harjati, our co-host here. He wants to know what you think of both the novel and the movie Smoke Signals in its depiction of Native Americans.
I like Sherman's book. I like the book. You know, Sherman in many ways is sort of a stand-up comic. So he's good at fast lines, quick lines. And I think, so he's clever and funny that way and poignant often. I think Smoke Signals was a good book, or a good movie rather. They did a good job. Chris Eyre did a good job directing it. And the story was well told and poignant about Indian men and their fathers. And we are often have, as a consequence of colonization, dysfunction within our families. We haven't learned to be home yet in our immediate lives, in our larger lives. We're still wrestling with those things. As I always say too to my people, no amount of money can undo the poverty of our souls. We have to work on that ourselves. We gotta work on that. So I think in that way, the movie was touching and it was entertaining. But I must say one thing: we as Indian people, if you want to depict our everyday lives, we don't go around making jokes about Indians and white people constantly. And so when you see them on the bus playing all of this, that became entertainment and was not representative of us. When I'm with my family, I don't sit there and go, hey, what do you think about Indians? What do you think about John Wayne? We don't do that. I mean, you know, that's entertainment and jokes about people. We do make jokes. We've got, a lot of jokes about, non-Indian people. And I can tell lots of them, but we don't go around, we usually just talk about our lives and what's going on. But I think it was a good movie, and I'm glad people are talking about it. There's a new wave of young people, and there's been like a 20-year gap between Sherman and myself. And there's a new wave of young American Indian filmmakers and some writers that are coming up in Hollywood. And it's like they forgot us, like they're the first to do this. And, again, it's important that we have a sense of history and that a lot of us have, paved the way. I'm sure a lot of women in the women's movement feel that about younger women today who aren't aware of the contributions that they made to change the world for women.
Okay, and here's Patricia, who is clearly not in high school. She's a colleague, and she wants to know, do you have resources for teachers who want to add more Native American studies to our curriculum?
There's quite a few good books out. There's there's a book that recently came out that's history. I just saw a lot of them are kind of big and long. And so what you want to do, Patricia, what I would recommend is, and I can get you a list of books through Dr. Langford, especially if you're going to teach, take excerpts from a lot of these books. You can take chapters. And one of the things that I've done in my own Native American classes, I excerpt things from books and put together a reader. And I think that's probably the wisest thing to do, because I can recommend some books, but Patricia, they're really big books, and I know they would be impossible to teach for one class or take a lot of time. So, but there are quite a bit of books around. There's chapters, there's short stories, there's things like that are around. Joy Harjo has, if you're teaching poetry, the poet laureate has just put out a collection. And again, the problem is it's huge. From Norton, it's from Norton. And I can't remember the long kind of title, something about when we remember our songs, we fly, or something like that. But it's Joy Harjo has been the editor. And what she's done is gone around and collected poetry from American Indians in every part of the country over the last 100 years or so, 150 years. And it's a wonderful anthology. and again, select poems from that. Natalie Diaz is a young American Indian poet who is really doing interesting things. Again, she's LGBTQ. She's a Yuma, California Indian, a former pretty well-known basketball player, incidentally. And, but she's doing some really interesting stuff that I think is appealing and accessible about the environment, language, culture, and gender, and the interaction or intersectionality is the word today of all those things.
All right, and Greg, by way of saying thank you, because you offered another 10 minutes, and I think we've used it up, and I know you have another meeting coming up. So by way of thank you, I do want to mention also by way of advertising for my own course, I will be teaching Joy Harjo's Brave in my upcoming English 1B classes, and Greg Sarris's newest book, which is called How a Mountain Was Made, which retells the legends and creation stories of his own people in a magnificent and totally accessible voice. And I'm hardly the only teacher who's using these books, like Greg's new book, How a Mountain Was Made, in my curriculum. So I want to put a word in for using How a Mountain Was Made as a teaching text. It's such an accessible and powerful and memorable book. And I think that it again, many of Greg's books are taught in colleges, universities, and high schools across the United States. But his new book is eminently and beautifully teachable and completely accessible. I hope that we'll also be offering a film version of a stage version of some of the stories that was actually produced by Native American students from Greg's tribe, high school age students and middle school age students, who did a staged version of some of the stories. So hopefully we'll be able to meet in that way some of the young students from Greg's own tribe. So Greg, thank you so much for being here. And I hope that some of the students that are currently with us today will be inspired to take English 1B from me and learn more about you. And even if you don't take, of course, English 1B from Scott Langford, I hope that you will Google Greg. There's a brilliant new film, or there's a brilliant new brief film about Greg Sarris that was just produced by our publisher, Heyday. Greg and I share the same publisher. I did send it to your teachers, Mike and Trish, and so they could share that with you, with tributes from everybody from the Grateful Dead on up through California government figures, and it's a beautiful tribute to what Greg has been able to accomplish. So Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sandwiching us in between the UC Board of Governors and the Smithsonian Institution. Thank you for being you and for inspiring generations of teachers, including me and students today at CSU and elsewhere. It's been a great conversation, and thank you for joining us on the Stanford Gen Channel and at Foothill College for Native American Heritage.
Well, and let me say thank you, Scott, and thank you, teachers, and especially you students. Thank you for caring. And remember, your life is not a dress rehearsal. It's the only one you got. So get on that stage and demand your light. Be well, everybody.